All right, let's dive right in here to segment one. Now, segment one is a really interesting segment in a lot of different ways. It's 16.8 miles, it's 2,800 feet of elevation up and 2,200 feet of elevation down. Now, those numbers might not mean a lot to you, especially if this is your first through hike. So, let me give you sort of my standard rule, and that is the threshold for where hikes really start getting difficult is at about 300 feet of elevation gain per mile or descent as well. Many of you folks, if you're like me, the descents can be just as hard as the ascents. And so it can be really challenging, but know that it's that 300 feet per mile threshold where I think that's going to be getting into the tougher area of difficulty. Now, where segment one gets really challenging is it starts in Waterton Canyon for the first 6 miles. You only gain about 100 feet of elevation. And I'll show you a video here shortly. And it's basically a road walk for those first 6 miles. And when you're doing the math in this section to figure out how difficult it is, that 2,800 feet is really 2,700 feet in the last 10 miles. So it's all kind of consolidated in that last climb. And so what we need here is a really specific kind of approach to make sure that you are ready and sort of cognizant of the challenges. Because if you just look at Waterton Canyon and you think, oh man, that's easy, that's a piece of cake, and you don't pay attention to how that segment will affect the rest of the segment, you can end up with some really difficult challenges. So let's take a look here. What I did is I made a little bit of a sort of montage of each segment. I didn't want to make a video that gives away everything in the segment, so I didn't want to lose those folks who want everything to be a surprise, but I want you to get a little bit of a taste of it. So here's a little bit of a video, and I think I'll be talking over it, so forgive me for that. But this is our segment one, and you start off here and you head off into Waterton Canyon. I want you to notice here that it's really flat, but also that sun exposure. This was super early in the morning. Actually, Miller from Mad Hippies took me out there and dropped me off. And so he might be in this video. I know that there were a couple of times when I think he showed up, but it's really, really flat, really gentle. And then you come to the dam, and then all of the climbing starts hitting you right away. So you see here, this is where the climb starts, and you start making your way through. And I think that that might be Double Dip up there. She hiked with me a little bit as well. And then you kind of hit this sun exposure area, and you see where you start to descend, and the Platte River is down there in that basin or the valley below. And this spot here is really important. This is the campsite by the South Platte River, and another one there. It's a little spot, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment or two, because those are really, really important areas. So basically what we have there is sort of a taste of what those 16 miles look like. And here, Lee, you're spot on. We're going to talk quite a bit about this. The climb right after Bear Creek is really difficult. That's actually, you're hitting the nail on the head. And so let's talk a little bit about what I put in my first tips, and then we'll jump ahead to what my new tips are for this segment, or my additional tips is probably a better way to say this. So 3 years ago, I offered these tips, and I still think they hold true. Number one is watch the sun in Waterton Canyon. And what that means is try your best to stay out of the sun. So use a sun umbrella if you have it, wear your sun hoodie, make sure that you're paying attention to that, and drinking a lot more water than you may even think is necessary, because basically that segment's not difficult. So if you're not forcing yourself to drink water, you then end up starting that big climb and you'll be dehydrated, because 6 miles will typically take most hikers about 2 to 3 hours, give or take. And so you just want to be really careful for that. I mentioned to people they should consider camping at Bear Creek, and that's 8.7 miles in. I still think that's a really good option. Just know that if you do decide to camp there at 8.7 miles in at Bear Creek, there are very few campsites available, so you will want to get there early. You're going to hear our start early quite a bit today. So starting early to get there to that first really reasonable campsite at Bear Creek is a great idea, especially if you are sort of testing out some new gear or not sure exactly how things are going to go. And then just be aware also of the people coming in with dogs will be coming in right at the end of Waterton Canyon as well. Dodsworth, thank you for those kind words. And also here, this is an important one for those of you with pups. Starting at the Indian Creek Trailhead, makes it over to Lenny's Rest and bypasses Waterton. That's also a great alternative for a lot of folks if you don't want to do that road walk. I think that's just a great option for a lot of folks to just see a different route. And I'm told that it's really beautiful. It's one of the few stretches of the trail that I've not done, but definitely worth it as well. Now, let's go back over here and talk a little bit about that, where you get to the dam. And my first new tip for you all here. What, did I get them all? I'm sorry. And at the South Platte, remember I showed you the video there of the campsites. And if you do plan to camp at the South Platte, which is 16.8 miles in, you need to get there early because there are only a handful of good spots there. You can end up finding a spot there in a pinch, but you'll end up sleeping on a slope. And that's a really tough one for a couple of reasons. When we get into segment 2, you're going to need to start that segment early to make it through. So if you plan on staying at the South Platte, get there early. Do not camp on the other side of the South Platte where there are signs saying no camping. We want to be good stewards of the Colorado Trail, so make sure that you are being respectful of the private landowners in that area as well. Now, I did mention this one just a moment ago. There are a lot of bighorn sheep there in the south, in the Waterton Canyon. Watch for bighorn sheep, but specifically, this is my super secret tip. It's not really that secret, but when you get to the dam and you're looking head on at the dam, look to the left up in the cliffs and just stare at it for a little bit. Give it 3 minutes and watch for movement. Every time I've been there, I've seen bighorn sheep there on that cliff. So if you're looking for wildlife, you can see them. There's also a pretty reasonable chance you've already seen some bighorn sheep in the canyon. I've seen herds of them there. If you go look at Mad Hippie's Life at their shorts, they've got a really cool video in the canyon of a couple of bighorn sheep smashing heads together. Really, really cool video as well. So just check that out. It's a nice way to kind of mark the end of the Waterton Canyon and get kind of get a view of things. And you're probably going to stop there anyway because there's a picnic shelter with a roof and a bathroom there. So a lot of people choose to stop right there and just kind of hang out anyway. So as you head over there, check that out. And as Elderberry points out, there are newborns now, and so there are a bunch of baby rams there in the area and ewes and such. So that's a really cool one. Just to see some of that wildlife. The canyon actually, as much traffic as it sees, gets a lot of wildlife in there. I've seen people have seen bears. I've seen lots of snakes, of course. There have been a couple of deer, and I think somebody even said they saw a mountain lion there once upon a time. I've not seen a mountain lion there, but I would like to. So let's talk a little bit about if you stay at Bear Creek. Bear Creek is a spot where, as the name implies, there has been some bear activity in the past. Just be really cautious of your food. Make sure you're taking care of it. Bears are nothing really to be worried about so long as you're practicing good bear safety etiquette. So hanging your food, using a bear canister. I personally don't like Ursacs, and if you're interested in why I don't like Ursacs, you can let me know. You can send me a message on Instagram at Backcountry Champion, and we can talk that over. But suffice it to say, I've seen a number of folks who've had their Ursacs destroyed by bears, and I mean destroyed on the Colorado Trail, specifically at the base of Hope Pass. I've seen the Ursacs just get absolutely shredded. So if you do take an Ursac, I still encourage you, especially at these high traffic areas with new hikers, go ahead and hang that up and take care of your food. I don't believe you'd be in any real danger still, but I do believe that you would be real bummed out if you had to go back and start the hike over again because you had to ditch and go to Denver and get a resupply of food because your food is now in the belly of a black bear somewhere in that South Platte River area. Okay, so let's talk here for a moment about my final tip. I'll take a little sip of water, and that will really mark us here as we're going into this last tip. I'm going to listen to my own advice. Is go easy. Pay attention to your feet and hydration. This is more than a marathon, right? You're talking about the equivalent of 20 marathons if you're going all the way to Durango. Take your time. Pay attention to your hydration. Take lots of breaks, lots of snacks. Even if you're not hungry, still start feeding yourself snacks. It's really likely you're going to lose your appetite in the first couple of days, and it's a really important thing to keep that food and energy up and making sure your morale stays high and making sure your hydration's up so that you don't get cramps and the like, because cramps can lead to further injury. Now, by way of your feet, this is where making sure you are really paying attention to your body and feeling for hot spots. So if you feel sort of a hot spot developing on your foot, you know what I'm talking about if you've ever felt it. If you don't know what a hot spot is, just think of it just like it sounds. If you feel a spot on your foot starting to feel hot, stop, put some Leukotape on it. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I love Leukotape. Put some Leukotape on it. Make sure you're taking care of that. The other thing that I'd recommend for blisters, and this is sort of my hottest take, the most one of the quirks that I've developed over the years, I switched from big boots to trail runners and trekking poles. So trekking poles and trail runners, I don't have any ankle injuries at that point. What it allows me to do then is to carry a fresh pair of socks. Hey everybody, sorry about that. Our internet is bananas here. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but we have some storms here in Chicago, so we'll do our best to hang in here. Appreciate your patience. Sorry, Jody, I didn't mean for that to freeze there. So there. So just take really good care of your feet. You're gonna need them for the next 500 miles, and know that this segment here is a challenge. Specifically, as someone pointed out, you'll have to remind me here. There's a section right after Bear Creek. It's about a mile stretch where the trail gets really hard. So take your time climbing that incline. It's really steep. You're going to be fine. You just need to give yourself more time and be patient with it. Take really good care of your feet. Give yourself extra time. It's the number one resource you have, and enjoy it. Remember, this is really it's the adventure of a lifetime. So don't be discouraged. Know that there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. You're going to be fine. And then you are going to make your way into segment two. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about that segment two.